Caleb's Story, Chapter 12. I didn't remember the wind dying in the night. I didn't remember falling asleep. When I woke, it was light, the sun high, shining on the iced trees. The fence around the paddock looked slick and cold. From my window, I could see the horses' cloud breaths as they ate hay. Cassie's room was empty, her bed rumpled. Grandfather's room was neat, his bed made. Next to the door stood his bag, all packed. The journal I had given him sat on top. I ran down the stairs, stopping suddenly in the kitchen. Grandfather and Sarah sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. I could hear Cassie chattering to Papa in his bedroom. Sarah smiled at me. "Sleep well, Caleb?" I shook my head. "What happened last night was my fault," I said. "I put up the rope, Sarah. I must have done it wrong." "Fault?" said Sarah. "Oh, Caleb, I want you to listen to me. There comes a time when fault doesn't matter. Things happen, and we can't blame ourselves or someone else forever." I heard a noise behind me and saw Papa standing there, Cassie beside him. I knew he had heard Sarah's words. "Look," said Cassie, "Papa's using a cane now." Papa sat down at the table. Grandfather poured him coffee. "You must have been up all night," he said to Papa. Papa looked at Sarah. "I didn't want her to go back to sleep," he said. Grandfather smiled. "No, you didn't." Grandfather stretched. "I have some things to finish before—" He stopped. He looked at us for a moment, then he walked up the stairs. "Before what?" asked Cassie. "Before he leaves," I said quickly. "His bag is packed upstairs. He told me that soon you could go back to work, Papa, that you'd be happier then." Papa looked toward the stairs. "I don't want Grandfather to go away," said Cassie. "I don't." Her eyes filled with tears. "Cassie," said Sarah softly, "please make your bed." "Do I have to?" said Cassie. Sarah smiled. "All right," said Cassie. She ran off, her shoes clattering on the wooden stairs. Sarah looked at me, and I knew what her look meant. I should leave them alone, too. I took a biscuit and started up the stairs. "Things happen, Jacob," I heard Sarah say. "The rope broke. I could have died." "Don't, Sarah," said Papa. "You could have lost me, Jacob," said Sarah, "and that's the way life is. Something happens, one little moment in time. If you're lucky, you have a chance to make things better. You have that chance here. Don't let it pass." I heard Papa get up from his chair. "Do you want some help?" asked Sarah. "No," said Papa. "I'll do this myself." I walked up the stairs quietly, Papa slowly coming up the stairs behind me. Grandfather stood at his window, looking out over the farm. As if he didn't even see me, Papa passed me and went into Grandfather's room. Grandfather and Papa, so much alike, faced each other. "Jacob," said Grandfather, "sit down." Papa shook his head. "I'm all right. I'll stand," said Papa, leaning on his cane. There was a long silence, then came Papa's voice, softer than I'd heard it in a long time. "Why didn't you take me with you? All those years ago, I wanted to be with you, no matter where you were." "Jacob," said Grandfather, but Papa went on, "you didn't write, not one letter, and I waited and waited." "I know," said Grandfather. "I couldn't write, Jacob, because I didn't know how to write you. I never learned." Papa moved closer to Grandfather. "I was so ashamed," whispered Grandfather. "Caleb knew. Caleb taught me. All the evenings in this room, Caleb taught me how to read, so I could write to you." Papa turned and saw me standing in the doorway. "Caleb did that," said Papa. "All those years, I was so little, and I began to think that somehow something I had done had made you go away." "No," said Grandfather quickly. "What I did was wrong. Your mother and I could not live together any more, but what I did was wrong. It was my fault, all my fault." "Fault," said Papa very softly. "Sarah says fault doesn't matter." Grandfather handed Papa a small sheet of paper. "I started to write you a letter," he said. Papa read what was written there, but didn't speak. "It says, 'I love you, Jacob,'" said Grandfather. Papa looked at the paper for a long time. "Don't go," he said, his voice low. "Please don't leave us again. You belong here. I don't want to miss you again, ever." Grandfather put his arms around Papa, and they stood in the small room, holding on to each other. I turned and went downstairs, where Sarah still sat at the kitchen table. I sat across from her. "Remember you asked me who I wanted to be like?" I said to Sarah. Sarah nodded. "It's Papa. I want to be like Papa," I said. For some reason, I couldn't say why, I began to cry. Sarah reached out and took my hand, but I cried so hard that finally Sarah got up and came to sit by me, putting her arms around me. Lottie and Nick came over to us, Lottie putting her head in my lap so that my tears fell onto her nose. Cassie came into the room. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," said Sarah. "Not one thing in the world is wrong." And here is the final excerpt from Caleb's journal. The kitchen is full of people and food. The turkey sits on the table, grandfather carving it and cursing at it. Papa laughs at this as if it is something old, something familiar. Sun comes in the window so that everything and everyone is touched by it like gold, even Seal and Min by the fire. Papa is smiling again. Sarah has not stopped. Even Lottie and Nick seem to smile as they hope for grandfather to drop the turkey for them to eat. Cassie is practicing saying a new grace, one that does not have food in it. I like the food grace myself. Soon, Sam and Justin and Anna will drive up the road and into the yard. Everyone will run outside to greet them, and the dogs will bark and leap up, and I can tease Anna again about Justin because he is home again and safe. Grandfather will stay. He has started writing in the journal I gave him, but he won't let me read it yet. He says it is private. The winter came early and will stay longer. There will be winds and storms, but I don't care. There is happiness here now. What Sarah told Cassie is true. Not one thing in the world is